Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we're doing something a little different. We're not talking about a king, a battle, or a lost city. We're talking about something we all live by, but rarely think about. The calendar. That grid on your wall or phone seems so simple, but its story is one of cosmic observation, political power, divine ritual, and humanity's eternal struggle to make sense of time itself. From ancient moon watchers to popes who literally deleted 10 days from history, the journey to our modern calendar is more fascinating and bizarre than you can possibly imagine. So, before we start this journey through the ages, do me a favor. If you enjoy these deep dives into the very fabric of our reality, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It really helps more people find these stories. And, as always, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always incredible to see our global community connecting. Now, dim those lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft, almost timeless hum. And let's ease into tonight's exploration of how we learned to measure our lives. Imagine a world with no numbers on a screen, no written language to record the past, without even the concept of months, hours, or minutes. Imagine a life where the only clock was the cosmos itself. This was the world of our Paleolithic ancestors. Yet even in that deep, unrecorded past, time moved, the seasons turned, and people noticed. Before there were calendars, before there were timekeeping devices, before there was even a shared language to describe it all, early humans tracked the passage of time by watching nature. The rhythm of the earth, its light and darkness, its shifting seasons, the silent dance of its sky was their only clock, their only guide. The most obvious and fundamental cycle was the day itself. Sunrise brought light, warmth, and the hunt. Sunset brought darkness, cold, and the need for shelter and fire. This simple, powerful division of time into light and dark was the first, most primal unit of human experience. But beyond the daily pulse of the sun, early humans quickly learned to observe the moon. Its phases were consistent, dramatic, and deeply mesmerizing. A glowing disk in the night sky that would grow from a sliver to a brilliant orb, shrink back to nothing, and then, with eerie regularity, begin the cycle all over again. The moon became humanity's first great timekeeper. Its cycle, roughly 5 days, provided a predictable, repeating unit of time that would later inspire the very idea of months. In fact, the word month itself is a direct descendant of the word or. To our early ancestors, a full lunar cycle wasn't just a pretty light show. It was a practical guide for survival. It could signal when certain animals would migrate, when specific plants would be ripe for gathering, when tides would be high or low. It was a celestial signpost, helping them prepare for what came next in the endless, unfolding story of the world. But the moon wasn't alone in the sky. Patient observers began to notice other, subtler patterns. They saw that the length of shadows changed throughout the year, growing long in the winter and shrinking in the summer. They noticed that the position of the sun at sunrise and sunset slowly shifted along the horizon, a celestial pendulum swinging between two extremes. And they learned that certain stars and constellations only appeared during specific seasons, heralding the coming of cold or the return of warmth. Over countless generations, communities began to not only notice these patterns, but to remember them, to encode them into their culture, and to pass that vital knowledge on. This knowledge wasn't just observational. It was sacred. To understand the rhythms of time was to understand the workings of the gods, the temper of the land, and the very fabric of life itself. Ancient people began to leave their marks, their attempts to pin down the elusive flow of time. They carved notches into bones, perhaps tallying the days between full moons. They painted symbolic patterns on cave walls, maybe representing the turning of the season. And in one of the greatest leaps of human ingenuity, they began to align massive stones with the sun's rising and setting points during the solstices. These weren't primitive scribbles or random constructions. They were the world's first calendars, humanity's earliest, boldest efforts at marking the passage of time. Some of the oldest known calendar-like artifacts are over 30,000 years old. antler bones with carefully carved tally marks, possibly tracking moon cycles or perhaps even menstrual cycles. Another natural rhythm deeply tied to survival, fertility, and the continuation of the tribe. In the absence of clocks and digital alerts, our earliest ancestors lived in a state of profound attunement with nature's cues. Time was not an abstract concept to be managed or wasted. It was the very breath of the earth. It told you when to move, when to hunt, when to gather, when to hide, and when to look up at the sky with a sense of wonder and hope. Before time had numbers, it had meaning, and before it had formal names, it had stories, etched in stone, passed down by firelight, and guided by the silent, majestic clockwork of the heavens above. For ancient humans, the moon wasn't just a convenient source of nighttime light. It was a clock written in the sky, a divine and a predictable narrator of passing time. Its ever-changing phases were mesmerizing. The waxing crescent growing into a brilliant full moon, then waning back into the darkness of the new moon before the cycle began anew. This roughly 29 five-day rhythm was the earliest and most universally observed natural cycle, and it became the foundation for the first true calendars. Long before great civilizations rose to build pyramids and write epics, hunter-gatherers across every continent were counting moons. Not years, not weeks, but moons. These lunar phases provided the first structured units for marking longer stretches of time, moving beyond the simple day-night cycle. We know this isn't just speculation because archaeologists have unearthed a wealth of evidence. Engraved bones and stones, some tens of thousands of years old, have been found with carefully carved markings arranged in repeating sequences. Many scholars believe these are not random doodles but deliberate tallies, tracking the days between each visible phase of the moon. One of the most famous of these artifacts is the Ishango bone, discovered in Central Africa and dated to around 20,000 BCE. It contains a series of notches that some researchers believe correspond to a 6-month lunar calendar, possibly used to track not only time, but perhaps also fertility cycles or seasonal hunting patterns. Why was the moon the first choice for a calendar? Because its changes were so obvious and accessible. Solar changes, like the slow shift of sunrise on the horizon, happened subtly and required patient, long-term observation. The stars, while predictable, required a deep and specialized knowledge to interpret. But the moon was different. It was a dynamic, ever-changing presence in the night sky, shifting its shape every few days and offering a clear, visual sense of progress through time. For early humans, especially nomadic groups who were constantly on the move, this was both a practical and reliable guide. A month was simply one complete moon cycle, and 12 of these cycles came tantalizingly close to a full solar year. Though not quite, this slight mismatch, a lunar year, is about 354 days, while a solar year is about 365, would eventually cause significant problems, especially for settled agricultural societies that needed far more accurate planting and harvesting schedules. As the first civilizations began to form in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and beyond, many of them formalized these lunar calendars. The Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Chinese, the Maya, and the Hebrews all developed and used sophisticated versions of lunar or lunisolar timekeeping. Some traditions, like the Islamic calendar, remain strictly lunar to this day, which is why its holidays, like Ramadan, appear to float through the seasons from a solar perspective. Other cultures began the long, complex process of adjusting their lunar systems, adding leap days or entire intercalary months every few years, to try and sync the moon's more rapid cycle with the slower, more agriculturally relevant rhythm of the solar year. But in these early, foundational stages of human civilization, the moon reigned supreme. The calendar wasn't just a practical tool for organizing life. It was a sacred map, a way to understand the divine will. The moon was often personified as powerful gods, goddesses, or celestial beings who watched over the people below. Its cycles were deeply tied to religious festivals, agricultural rituals, and creation myths. In tracking the moon, early humans weren't just measuring time, they were giving it meaning, order, and a sacred dimension. The moon taught humanity how to count beyond the fingers on their hands. And in learning to count, we began to understand time not as an endless, undifferentiated blur, but as something that could be held, named, structured, and passed on. As human societies made the monumental shift from nomadic hunter-gatherer bands to settled agricultural communities, the moon alone was no longer a sufficient timekeeper. Farming, the very bedrock of civilization, required more than knowing when a month had passed. It demanded a precise and reliable awareness of the seasons, when to till the soil, when to plant the seeds, when the life-giving rains would come, and when the killing frost would return. For that crucial knowledge, our ancestors turned their gaze from the night sky to the day's great star, the sun. Unlike the moon's dramatic nightly changes, the sun's annual movements were subtle, a slow, almost imperceptible dance across the horizon over the course of a year. But those who observed patiently, generation after generation, began to notice a profound and predictable pattern. The sun did not rise and set in the exact same place every day. Its position shifted gradually along the horizon, swinging between two extreme points at certain key moments of the year, what we now call the solstices and the equinoxes. The sun reached these celestial turning points. These became the cosmic anchors of the solar year, marking the longest and shortest days, and the two times when day and night were in perfect, harmonious balance. Ancient people, armed with this knowledge, began to construct the world's first solar calendars, not with ink and parchment, but with massive, immovable stones. The most famous and enigmatic example is Stonehenge in England. Though its full purpose remains a subject of intense debate, its precise alignment with the summer and winter solstices is unmistakable. On those two key days of the year, the sun rises or sets in perfect, breathtaking alignment with specific stones in the circle. In a world without clocks, calendars, or computers, this was a feat of stunning precision, a testament to a deep understanding of celestial mechanics. And similar solar observatories appear across the globe. In the desolate Nabta Playa of Egypt's western desert, a stone circle predating Stonehenge by 1,000 years seems to align with the summer solstice. In Chaco Canyon in North America, the sun dagger petroglyph marks the solstices with a piercing sliver of light. In the high Andes, the temples of Machu Picchu feature stones and windows precisely carved to frame the rising sun on key dates. These were not random constructions, they were deliberate, sophisticated instruments built by dedicated sky watchers who understood the profound connection between celestial events, agricultural cycles, and their own spiritual rituals. For these ancient societies, the sun was far more than a giant, distant torch. It was a powerful divine entity. Many cultures across the world worshiped solar deities. Ra in Egypt, the creator god who sailed across the sky each day. Inti in the Andes, the divine ancestor of the Inca emperors. Surya in India, who rode a chariot pulled by 7 horses. The return of the sun after the winter solstice, the longest night of the year, was often a cause for immense celebration, symbolizing rebirth, the triumph of light over darkness, and the continuity of life itself. These festivals, all carefully aligned with solar events, eventually formed the backbone of many early religious calendars. Tracking the sun required immense patience, sophisticated architectural planning, and a deep spiritual vision. It meant observing not just one moon cycle at a time, but the full 365-day journey of the solar year. It meant mapping the sky, recording the horizon, and marking the passage of time with a permanence that could withstand centuries. Where the moon gave humanity the concept of rhythmic motion, the sun gave us the concept of grand, cyclical structure. Through massive stones and carefully observed shadows, our ancestors began to bind the heavens to the earth. And in doing so, time was no longer just a repeating cycle. It became a calendar, carved into the very landscape, aligned with the stars, and wrapped in the sacred mysteries of the cosmos. For early civilizations, the act of tracking time wasn't just about organizing agriculture or knowing when the seasons would turn. It was a profoundly spiritual act. Time itself was seen as sacred, a divine rhythm flowing from the heavens that governed not just the natural world, but the moral and ritual life of human society. Every moment, every day, every season carried a cosmic weight and a specific meaning. Calendars, in this worldview, were not simply passive charts for recording dates. They were active instruments of ritual, meticulously designed to align human behavior with the will of the gods and the grand, unfolding drama of the universe. In ancient Mesopotamia, this connection was particularly strong. Priests would ascend the towering ziggurats, not just to be physically closer to the sky, but to observe the movements of the stars and planets with religious devotion. These observations were not purely scientific in our modern sense. They were acts of divination, attempts to read the intentions of the gods. The Babylonians divided time with a stunning accuracy that still influences us today. A 7-day week, a 360-degree circle, and a base 60 number system that gives us our 60-minute hours and 60-second minutes. But this wasn't about secular efficiency. It was about creating a human system that mirrored what they believed was the divine, mathematical structure of the universe. The Egyptians took this sacred connection even further. Their calendar, one of the most advanced and accurate in the ancient world, was intimately tied to the rhythms of the Nile River and the celestial rising of Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. When Sirius, which they called Sopdet, reappeared at dawn after a 70-day absence. It was a major celestial event that heralded the annual flooding of the Nile, a life-giving inundation that replenished the soil and ensured a bountiful harvest. That celestial moment marked the beginning of the Egyptian New Year, a massive celebration tied to fertility, rebirth, and the continued favor of the gods across the ocean. In the Americas, the Maya developed one of the most intricate and complex calendar systems ever devised by humanity. It wasn't a single calendar, but a sophisticated, interlocking series of time counts that combined lunar cycles, a 365-day solar year, the Hab, and, most importantly, a 260-day sacred cycle, the Tzolk'in. For the Maya, time was not a linear progression from past to future. It was cyclical, divine, and deeply interwoven with prophecy, ritual, and destiny. Every single day had a spirit, a divine patron, a specific energy. Every date held a fated meaning. Major life events, coronations, sacrifices, festivals, and even the declaration of wars were all meticulously timed to coincide with auspicious celestial rhythms as dictated by the calendar. Kings and queens were crowned, not just when it was politically convenient, but when the stars and the sacred calendar aligned, ensuring their rule began with divine blessing. To ignore the calendar, to act against its prescribed rhythms, was to invite chaos, not just in the agricultural fields, but in the very fabric of the cosmos. In this worldview, the ability to keep and interpret time was a form of immense power, held by priests and rulers, a power not over people, but over meaning itself. Sacred time governed the lives of these ancient civilizations, and through the careful observation of the sun, moon, and stars, the calendar became more than just a record of passing days. It became a sacred bridge, a vital link between the mortal world and the divine, eternal realm. As civilizations grew more complex and their administrative needs expanded, calendars evolved from being tools of ritual and survival into becoming powerful instruments of political and imperial power. The person or institution who controlled the calendar, who determined the dates of festivals, the collection of taxes, the timing of harvests, and the start of military campaigns controlled the very rhythm of society itself. Calendars became potent political tools, religious statements, and even cultural weapons used to shape a unified identity, synchronize vast empires, and reinforce the authority of the ruling class. In ancient Rome, Julius Caesar's radical reform of the chaotic and easily manipulated Roman calendar was far more than just a bureaucratic fix. It was a profound statement of power and order. The new Julian calendar, introduced in 45 BCE, imposed a rational, predictable structure over a system that had become a political plaything. It allowed the sprawling Roman Empire to synchronize its administration across vast and diverse territories, from the misty frontiers of Britain to the sun-scorched provinces of Egypt, and with the month of Quintilis being renamed July in Caesar's honor. The calendar itself became a lasting monument to his personal legacy and authority. Not to be outdone, his successor, Augustus Caesar, followed suit, renaming the month of Sextilis to August and, according to legend, adjusting its length to 31 days to equal that of July, because no emperor wanted his month, and by extension his legacy, to be shorter than his predecessors. In the world of Roman power, even the flow of time had to flatter the emperor. Meanwhile, in China, successive imperial dynasties created calendars that were intricately tailored to the reign of the current emperor and his divine mandate of heaven. The sophisticated Chinese lunisolar calendar was not just a practical tool for agriculture, it was deeply symbolic. When a new emperor ascended to the throne, a new calendar cycle often began, reinforcing the powerful idea that he had inherited the right to rule directly from the heavens. The calendar, with its complex calculations and celestial alignments, was a physical manifestation of cosmic harmony and the emperor's central place within that divine order. The Islamic calendar, established during the reign of Caliph Umar in the 7th century CE, also began with a foundational political and spiritual event, the Hijra, the Prophet Muhammad's migration from Mecca to Medina in 622 CE, which marked the birth of the Muslim community. The Ummah. Unlike the solar calendars of Rome and Persia, the Islamic calendar remained purely lunar. This meant that its religious festivals, such as Ramadan and Eid, would float through the seasons over the years. That very fluidity, however, became a powerful, unifying thread, tying Muslims together across vastly different regions and climates, all adhering to the same sacred, lunar timeline. Even in medieval Europe, calendars became battlegrounds for authority. The Christian Church masterfully aligned its own holy days, saints' days, and major religious festivals, like Christmas and Easter, with the dates of pre-existing pagan cycles and solstice celebrations. This was a clever strategy of cultural absorption. Time itself was effectively baptized, making the transition to Christianity feel more natural for newly converted population. The calendar didn't just tell people what day it was. It told them how to behave, who to worship, and what to believe. Calendars, therefore, were never neutral documents. They were meticulously curated by those in charge: emperors, priests, kings, and astronomers, defining when debts were legally due, when armies would march, when gods were to be honored, and when the very story of history began. From the halls of Rome to the courts of imperial China, the right to mark and control time became one of the ultimate forms of dominion. Because to shape the calendar was to shape reality itself, to make your story, your power, and your worldview the guiding rhythm of everyone else's life. By the 16th century, time itself, at least as measured by humanity, had drifted significantly out of sync with the cosmos. The Julian calendar, once a masterpiece of Roman engineering and imperial order, had slowly but surely lost its accuracy. Its system of adding a leap day every 4 years was a brilliant approximation, but it slightly miscalculated the true length of the solar year by about 11 minutes annually. This seems like a tiny, insignificant error, but over the course of centuries, that small drift accumulated. By the 1500s, the spring equinox, a crucial date for calculating Easter and a cornerstone of the liturgical year, which should have fallen around March 21st, had crept backward all the way to March 10th. For the Catholic Church, which depended on precise astronomical and seasonal dates to celebrate its most sacred holidays, this was not just an inconvenience. It was a creeping theological crisis. The human calendar was no longer aligned with God's celestial clock. Enter Pope Gregory XIII, who in 1582 launched the most significant and sweeping calendar reform in modern history, the creation of what we now know as the Gregorian calendar, guided by a commission of brilliant Jesuit astronomers and mathematicians, most notably Christopher Clavius. The Pope's solution to the temporal drift was both breathtakingly simple and audacious: to realign the calendar with the actual solar year and bring the spring equinox back to its proper place. 10 full days were simply dropped from existence. By papal bull, Thursday, October 4th, 1582, was to be immediately followed by Friday, October 15th. For the people living in Catholic countries, 10 days of their lives vanished overnight. Time itself was rewritten by decree. But the reform didn't stop with that one-time temporal jump. To ensure the calendar remained accurate for millennia to come, Gregory's team also revised the leap year rule. The Julian calendar had added a leap day every 4 years without exception, which was slightly too generous. The new, more precise Gregorian rule kept the leap year every 4 years, unless the year was divisible by 100. Unless, again, it was also divisible by 400. This meant that the years 1700, 1800, and 1900 were not leap years, while the year 1600 and 2000 were. This seemingly small adjustment corrected the long-term drift of the calendar, bringing its accuracy to within a mere 26 seconds per year of the true solar cycle. Still, the adoption of this new, more accurate calendar was neither immediate nor universal. The world of the 16th century was fractured by the Protestant Reformation. Protestant and Eastern Orthodox nations viewed the Gregorian calendar with deep suspicion, seeing it not as a scientific correction, but as a Catholic power play, a papist attempt to impose its authority on time itself. England and its American colonies, for instance, did not adopt the Gregorian calendar until 1752, by which point their calendar was off by a full 11 days, leading to riots and confusion as people demanded, "Give us back our 11." Russia, under the Orthodox Church, didn't switch until after the Bolshevik Revolution in 1918. For centuries, this meant that dates could differ drastically between neighboring countries. Imagine two people celebrating New Year's Day 2 weeks apart, or trying to coordinate an international treaty. Despite this initial resistance, the sheer scientific precision and practicality of the Gregorian calendar eventually won out. As science, global navigation, international commerce, and diplomacy grew more interconnected, the world desperately needed a shared, standardized system of time. The Gregorian calendar was simply too accurate and too useful to ignore. This reform wasn't just a minor correction to the calendar. It was a profound revolution in how humanity experienced and synchronized time. With the stroke of a papal pen, the world's days were recalibrated, and the foundations of modern, global timekeeping were born. In the end, the Gregorian reform did more than just fix the date of Easter. It aligned the human clock with the celestial one more perfectly than ever before, once again making the measurement of time a delicate dance between heaven and earth. Today, the calendar feels ordinary, almost invisible. It's something printed on office walls, displayed on our smartphones, or stuck to our kitchen magnets with a picture of a cat. But behind its simple, familiar grids and numbers lies a profound legacy, thousands of years in the making, a journey from sacred, nature-based ritual to incredible mechanical and atomic precision, from ancient priests observing the stars to global satellites syncing our digital lives. Timekeeping, once the exclusive and mysterious domain of shamans, priests, and royal astronomers, is now a global, standardized system, relentlessly and almost perfectly ticking. We now use the Gregorian calendar almost universally. It governs everything from our international laws and shipping schedules to the timing of space missions and the Olympic Games. But while this single calendar dominates our official and commercial lives, other, more ancient calendars still exist, echoing older rhythms and preserving rich cultural traditions. The Islamic Hijri calendar continues to guide the religious life for over 1 billion Muslims worldwide. The Hebrew calendar, a complex lunisolar system, still governs Jewish holidays and sacred observances. The Chinese lunisolar calendar shapes massive cultural festivals like the Lunar New Year, celebrated by millions. In India, numerous regional calendars, both solar and lunar, continue to coexist alongside the Gregorian one. Humanity, it seems, didn't entirely abandon its temporal diversity. It simply added new layers of utility on top of its ancient, sacred roots. And then there's the pinnacle of modern timekeeping, atomic time. This is the most precise method of measuring time ever created by humankind, based on the incredibly regular vibrations of cesium atoms. International Atomic Time. Time measures seconds with such mind-boggling accuracy that it would only gain or lose a single second over hundreds of millions of years. From this atomic standard, we derive Coordinated Universal Time, UTC, the global time standard that serves as the invisible backbone for everything from internet protocols and financial markets to international airline schedules. And in a beautiful, final nod to our planet's own imperfect rhythm, leap seconds are sometimes added to UTC to account for the Earth's slightly inconsistent rotation. a humbling reminder that even in our age of atomic perfection, the planet itself refuses to be completely predictable. Yet, despite all this incredible precision, we still live our daily lives according to rhythms that are deeply, primally human. We still celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, and graduations. We still look forward to the weekend with a sense of release and rest. We still count down to midnight on New Year's Eve, our hearts full of hope and resolutions, just as ancient people once watched the horizon with bated breath for the return of the sun after the longest night. The calendar, in its modern form, is both a cold, efficient tool and a warm, living tradition. It keeps our airplanes from colliding. Yes, but it also reminds us when to gather, when to feast, when to rest, and when to remember. Behind its almost sterile efficiency lies the same deep, human desire that drove our distant ancestors to carve notches into bones and align massive stones with the sky. The yearning to understand our place in the vast, unfolding mystery of time. In measuring the passage of time, we are, in the end, attempting to measure ourselves, our past, our present, and the dreams that await us in the future. What an incredible odyssey. From cave paintings to atomic clocks, it really makes you think about how we perceive and value time today. What part of the calendar's long history do you find the most surprising or thought-provoking? Share your thoughts down in the comments. I would love to hear them. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the history of time itself. If you enjoyed this exploration and it made you see your calendar in a new light, please give this video a like. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the stories that make us who we are. Until then, make your time count and stay curious.